I'm recording now. So I am recording the session and it'll be available within 5 business days on the ITSM wiki site. Let me continue going through our panelists. We've got Michelle Johnson, who is the lead project manager at University of Notre Dame. Next up, we have Hema, IT project manager, principal at Georgia Institute of Technology. I wasn't going to try to pronounce your last name, so I apologize.
That's fine.
Okay. Next, we have John Williams, who's the director of service management, director of the Service Management Office at Pennsylvania State University. And last but not least, we have Ed Weiss, is the service level manager at Illinois State University. Okay, we'll dive right in. What value is there in having projects when you can manage the life cycle of a service through releases or through changes?
So, yeah, I can take that. So project management and release management might look like same, but when you, I think there's a lot of background noise. Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so project management and managing the life cycle of a service through a release or so might look, in terms of tasks and stuff, it might look similar, but both bring value in 2 different perspectives. So before we dive into the value, I would like to just touch upon what each is meant to do. Okay, project management is focused on delivering defined scope within budget, timeline, and with limited resources. On the other hand, a service lifecycle management is about governing the IT project deliverable in moving into different environments.
John, that may still be you, so.
Okay, hold on. No, keep going.
Okay, so, are we good to go?
Yes.
Okay, the project management is more focused on delivering a defined scope, whereas service lifecycle is the more focused on building something, the project deliverable and moving it from dev to test to prod. So a project may happen once, but a release may happen in multiple times, and each release could also be handled as a project. So in terms of value, I would like to give an example of a service that we provide and how a project management function could add value to a service lifecycle. So one of the services that we provide in our central IT for our campus stakeholders is application integration to our ERP system. So we had recently initiative to integrate Slate, which is a student recruitment software, to our student information system banner. So as we sat to build this interface and work with the admissions team, we identified that they wanted to make Slate as the system of record for applicants, whereas today the banner is the system of record for our student as well as applicants. Now, even though the service deliverable is building the interface, now this change brings in a big business process impact, and this would involve and impact other service or campus stakeholders who are using this system. So our registrar, financial aid, and others would be impacted. So a stakeholder analysis and managing the stakeholders' impact becomes a key aspect of the project. And so we need to stake out the scope, roadmap, and identify the impact for these stakeholders and make sure that they are in alignment with whatever changes we are bringing in through this interface service. So there, the project management function of stakeholder management would be very valuable. and then communicating these changes and making sure that what timeline or in periods this changes are happening, and how it is getting impacted with these other departments, and what kind of testing they have to do, and all this communication management is also managed through a project management process. Whereas when you come to actually building the service, then you would work on specific interface that needs to be built. Even there, what we identified is the customer would wanted to go in with first, say, move on when ready implementation first, which is for our dual enrollment student, which is due in May, and then they wanted to release for the Common App freshman students. So, but as our technical team sat together to build this interface and identified the best way to do it, it became clearer that it would be better to have one interface built that would work for different applicants, because today it might be move on when ready, and then freshmen, and then tomorrow they can bring in transfer students, and then probably graduate students, but we don't want to rebuild this interface. So designing the solution and defining the architecture and roadmap also is a one-time affair, and those could be better managed through project management processes. And then when you actually building this interface, then you go through the service lifecycle management of how you want to build it, build a technical specification, bring it, and limit the scope to that particular release, which is right now we are working on the move on when ready, which is due on May, and you move through that process. This is where the difference in the value of project management and service lifecycle plays through. The other aspect also is when it comes to requirements, it would be more, in most cases, you would be building this new services or changing extensively a big service. You would be more focusing on items that might be applicable across different release cycles, such as so service level requirements, availability requirements, which would help you in building the service level agreements, and your support model, and what kind of help desk and production support structure you may need to build in place. So hopefully that helps, I believe.
Well, great answer. I just want to be mindful of the time. I apologize. No, we got kind of started late with these technical glitches and whatnot. So we do have a lot of questions, and I want to leave a little time at the end. So help me by keeping the answers, as relatively short as possible. And I think we'll get through this and make it worthwhile. So does anybody want to add to that question one before I move on to question two? And if you're muted, just let me know. I'll unmute you.
This is Hillary at BU. Just real quickly, we use projects to help us bundle work here, right? So if something's small, we do it through a service request, or medium, maybe through an enhancement, but projects help us manage the work. They help us provide structure.
Okay, great. Let's move on to question two then. So how does an understanding of the service management framework help enable projects to be more successful? So what are some challenges faced from service management and project management, especially around the ability to integrate the two?
I'll take that. This is Hillary again. Having an understanding of the service management framework really helps by providing a common language. It seems so basic and trivial, but it's really important, because it helps with project efficiency. We don't find that we're having to have the same conversation over and over again. People understand when we say we need knowledge-based articles, when we say we need an SLA, or submit a change request, or we need a continuity plan. People understand that language, and we would waste a lot of time if we had to have that conversation over and over. And it takes away the room for personal interpretation. People understand they're speaking about the same thing. One of the challenges I kind of think of project management and service management sort of like tension metrics, right? So you need both to create balance. So you want to do things on time and scope and budget, and you want to make sure you have all the requisite service management artifacts so that go live and operational phases are smooth. So they work together. And as for what's the last part, integration of the two. For much of service design here and service transition, we use what we lovingly refer to as the project life cycle here. And through the PLC, the project life cycle, we integrate ITIL and TOGAF and SDLC to ensure that all practices are addressed during any given project. So the PLC has hooks in it for creating things like, did you create a service definition? Do you need an SLA? To creating and addressing any service management items we need.
Anybody from the project management side want to comment on that, or?
This is Hema here. I can just add a couple of points to it. One thing is understanding a service management framework helps as well in the business case, because in some cases what happens is a project gets approved, or particularly a new product is bought and brought into service, but there is no attention paid on who would be the service owner or what would be the support tail entailed and what resources are required. And you end up shopping into the project team to support some of it, and as a result you don't have resources to work on projects. So understanding that framework upfront helps in planning for that. Also involve the service desk people from the beginning of the project. When you start planning the project, if you think about the support tail involved in throughout the life cycle of the service, that kind of helps in to bring in the right people from the support side, service desk, to get involved from the beginning of the project, so you can build in some improvements or work through some of the pain points early on. So the end result and the outcome of the project or service is much effective.
This is John Williams from Penn State. From our perspective, the onboarding of new services or even the request for enhancements, having a structured understanding of what the service management office expects, particularly for making catalog entries, really helps the project go well, because we are looking at all aspects of that service being successful. So our checklist at least incorporates checking with the various elements such as training and service desk and knowledge entries and all that. And it usually matches up with our project management people quite well, because particularly with the ones that have gone through the process already. Penn State is only a little over halfway through onboarding all of its units, so we are still dealing with onboarding and such at this point.
Yeah, I'd agree with both of you. Having the service involvement early on in the project team is really, really important.
Okay, excellent responses. The next question here. So how are the outcomes of the project supported by embedding service management deliverables and goals?
Well, hi, this is Michelle from the University of Notre Dame. And a thank you to my colleagues there, Hillary, John, and Hema. You basically handled a lot of that question for me. So I just want to reiterate and start back at the beginning. The project manager, their core responsibility is for the success of the project. So a success for the project centers upon delivering what the customer actually needs. Not necessarily what they want, but what they actually need. And part of that need is that whatever we give them is operational. And in order to be fully operational, we have to comply with and be aware of what does it mean to be operational and have an operational service in the organization that you're working in. So put another way, a project manager is responsible for managing the risk of a project. Anytime you make a change, you introduce risk. So for those of you who may be familiar with the iron triangle or the three-legged stool, there's lots of little colloquialisms used for that. But the core of that is the project manager manages scope, cost, and schedule. But if you expand that to what we use here, we use the hexagon, we have 3 additional factors. We have risk, customer satisfaction, and quality. So if you have poor service management deliverables or incomplete service management deliverables, we increase the risk of lower quality, lower customer satisfaction, increasing the schedule, increasing the time, so that we can actually deliver upon what our customers are looking for. Projects then can linger on and languish, and I believe, as Hema had said, the project team then gets tasked with supporting this service, and the project team's role is not to support a service forever and ever and ever. We have to transition that over to the support people, those that are designated to be responsible for the care and feeding of this new thing over the coming years. And there are times when the service and support manager may actually refuse to accept it if the project team has not actually given their people the tools in order to be able to operate the service in a stable fashion. So some of the critical factors, as has been mentioned, is to include upfront in the planning all of the requirements from the service owners. You want to make sure that the service operations, as well as the operations units themselves, that their needs are met. So this is very similar in concept to DevOps, where you want to make sure that you develop with operations in mind, and that when you consider operations, that you include the development life cycle as well. So it's very symbiotic in concepts for all of those different things. We need to make sure that we plan for an operationally stable service, and that there's a support model in place. And that then leads into the long-term customer satisfaction, as well as then a productive service moving forward. So the different things that you want to make sure you plan for all come from the service management model that your organization has. So for us, we have making sure that we have appropriate disaster recovery, not only a plan, but a test to make sure that we can, in fact, bring it back if something goes wrong. We have to make sure that we acknowledge and plan for the appropriate life cycle of the service itself, the SLA, the various support documentation, things like that. The project manager, the project management process, is responsible for setting those expectations and communicating and making sure all of those needs, in fact, are addressed. Service owners, support managers, they are stakeholders, not just the customer. It's not just the end recipient of that. And so we have to plan for their service management and their support and buy-in as well.
So hi, this is Bev Gyrie from BU, and I just wanted to add that we embed service owners into our project teams, so they're not just stakeholders, that we end up having a service owner or someone that they designate on the project team who is actually the person responsible with the key technical resources for planning the transition to operations. And they are also involved in many of the upfront steps. For example, they have sign off on requirements, they have sign off on the architecture documents. So hopefully, it doesn't always work out perfectly, but hopefully they are involved early, and they're actually driving all the planning, all the training that's needed internally, all the documentation that's needed to support the service at go live. We try to make it seamless as possible that way.
Yeah, here at Notre Dame, part of our project process, our last phase, the operationalized phase, we actually have instead of a project closeout document, we actually call it the project summary, which incorporates the summarization of what did you say you were going to deliver and what did you actually deliver, and it requires turnover approval from the service and support managers as well.
Here at Penn State, I agree totally with everything that's being said. I was looking at this question and realized that we've altered our expectation for onboarding into the service management program by, we use Box for file storage, and we put a crib sheet out there of the PennBach 5th edition knowledge areas, and each folder has a separate knowledge area. So in the case I'm talking about, the project deliverables actually influence how our service management onboarding goes, and we have that for every unit that we bring on board. Very standard process.
Well, great. This next question, as a service owner, I might know the cost of a service as it relates to incidents or changes against it. And then from the project perspective, we might know the cost of the project and what it's going to cost to build out whatever product or service. So I love this next question. So how can projects and service management better provide a overall larger picture of the total cost of ownership, including hours and dollars of a service?
So Mitch, I'll take this one. Whoops, let me just, so I'll tell you what we do at BU. It's not perfect, but I think over time we've gotten better at making sure as we're making major changes to services or introducing new services that we take as good of a end-to-end cost perspective as we can. What we do for our larger projects or our larger changes to services are managed through projects, or our creation of services are managed through projects. And as part of our annual planning and budgeting process where we propose these projects, we've embedded in some of the deliverables a service management mindset where the things you need to include in your project proposal look at not just the one-time project costs to get the service to go live or the changes to go live, but what's needed on an ongoing basis to support the service. And those can be external costs, vendor maintenance costs, ongoing professional services, ongoing consulting needs that we might need along the way. But they also include the internal resource costs to manage, sustain the service. We have, as we've looked more and more at cloud services, we've developed a true total cost of ownership model that goes beyond the IT costs that might go into things like costs for power, costs for space at the university. We don't use this routinely, but I think as we are looking at more cloud services, and when the business case might not be clear-cut, just looking at the IT costs, we'll do a more total cost of ownership analysis to look at the costs more broadly from a university perspective. When, as I said, it might not be as clear-cut that going the cloud route makes sense.
So at the University of Notre Dame, we have quite an active cloud strategy. And one of the things that we had as a requirement up front is that as we migrated our services into the cloud, that we had a way to tag all of the IIS components with the particular service identifier. So it then takes us that step forward to be able to say, all right, we know what our infrastructure operating costs are, at least for the things that are in the cloud. We can then associate that with the various projects that are being executed upon a particular service, from first-time implementation to subsequent upgrades and then eventual sunsetting. And then the last piece that we're still working on, we have information as to tickets and things like that in our ticketing system. So the next piece is to then associate the information together, and then that would then be able to give us a total cost of ownership. So we're on our way. We have the pieces. We just have to be able to integrate them together and then deal with the different outliers, as well as how do we want to do a staffing hours sort of costing as well. That one is definitely more or is less more nebulous than it is than the other aspects.
Okay, those great answers, and it's all about baby steps, and having both sides talk to each other and getting a big comprehensive picture. Let's move on to the next question. So, how do you govern projects and services, and how do you bring these efforts together?
I'll try to address this from our Penn State perspective. In order to do so, I have to set a little stage here. The Penn State's rather large, 24 campuses. We have 14 colleges, World Campus, and large alumni association. The governing of anything in here is really focused around the managerial structure. Our executive leadership has the final say on everything, and they usually form committees to focus on steering the various elements that are being managed. From a project management perspective, we have an enterprise project management office, which focuses on the major university-wide projects. We currently have 2 underway, LionPath, which is our student info system replacement, and WorkLine, which is our HR system replacement. Those are governed, managed at a very high level, and are governed with executive leadership on those committees. Now, at each unit level, and when I say unit, I mean campus, I mean college, I mean administrative unit, there may or may not be a project management office. Some just have some project managers with them, others have full offices. Central IT, the group which I fall under, has recently centralized its project management office. Now, it's still, the central IT consists of just around 600 people. So there are still project managers with each individual subunit, but they have centralized around a central project management office. These will obviously, our new CIO, who started in January, runs these, has report authority on this. They report to him, and they are focused on governing from the perspective, this is a large project. We either go by dollar size, by whether it's cross units, cross university, and anything with big political reach. To a lesser degree, depending on the size of the project, that unit may or may not have governance. One of the things I found encouraging from our central IT project management office is that the more you use them, the more you understand the project management perspective, and you actually start to expect things. And these smaller projects that might not make it on the radar to justify having a project manager with them, they know what they have to collect, what they have to get, what they have to do as far as moving things forward. So that's a maturity effort on our part, but I do see a move for more structured governance in the future here. It's just not at that point right now. Concerning our service management, we do have, we assign service owners for each service. I only have 2/3 of the university in the program right now, so that's not comprehensive, but some of those services cross multiple subunits, and in doing so, the fiscal responsibility might fall outside of that service owner's purview. So in a lot of things, we have Penn State has a need to evolve their financial responsibilities closer to our service management and project management focus. With that, bringing these efforts together, we do have an effort underway to form more of a governance structure with representation from across all of our stakeholders. As of now, it's not there, and anytime we have a project that comes up, they form a committee to act in a steering related capacity. And that is really they try to get representation from across all the units or involved, all the stakeholders involved in that. But ultimately it comes down to our executive leadership giving the blessing on certain things, and other ones falling to the lower level leadership to make that determination.
So at Notre Dame, we have somewhat similar but a little bit different at the same time. We have a governance model with guidance councils for projects, and that's who the governing bodies are made up of representative areas around campus, and they're bundled together. So employee services, financial services are in one, and student services in another, et cetera. From a blending of the two, our architects within our central IT have started developing a roadmap that articulates out not only where do we want to go from an enterprise enabled service, so that we want to encourage our customer units that want this functionality to go on our enterprise side, but then also to start planning out the sunsetting of our legacy systems as well. And the two groups, the two needs merge together in a body called Standards and Architecture, which the architects chair and all the enterprise architects chair, and then our divisional architects sit on that group as well. So when project needs come in, they're evaluated against this roadmap, against from an enterprise perspective, to not only identify times when we have projects that are looking to go beyond that or skirt that, but we can bring them back in, as well as identifying new opportunities where we may need to look forward facing from a roadmap perspective as well.
So at Georgia Tech, again, we have somewhat similar structure where we have a governance committee for student-related projects, and we have a governance committee for our financials-related thing, and then for our HR-related stuff, there is a separate governance committee. But in today's world, we don't come together and prioritize across these governance committees to get a centralized, prioritized list that acts as a governing body for all these individual committees. Now, with our new CAO who had recently come in, we are working on a governance transformation process, which brings all these together and have subcommittees and bubble up these to the steering committee where they could prioritize across the individual governance committees. With respect to service management, we are at a very early stages. We are right now in the process of analyzing our maturity level and training all our resources in ITSM. Today, what we have is if a project ends up in changing a service or gets in implementing a new service, we just go ahead and manage our service catalog and change that. Our service management is only limited to that at this point, but we have a plan in place to build a service model in the future.
There's a follow-up question for question 5 that I wanted to make sure got shared. Any of you at your institutions tying in your service catalog or service portfolio to this project portfolio process or the governance process around projects and services? So are you using service portfolio and project portfolio?
We at BU, projects are tied to services often. So yes, they're part of the two definitely overlap.
At Notre Dame, we have a service catalog, we call them service offerings, and projects that touch a service, a technology, are required to have and maintain the entry in the service catalog, which actually has then links out to where the various support documentation is, and it also contains information about the SLA and RTO type of information as well.
At Penn State, we don't. We have a service catalog, and we have requirements for making an entry into that. We actually aren't running portfolio management at this time.
Okay, great. Let's move on to the next question, and then after this question, we'll open it up for questions. So you can start typing in the chat window. I'll be monitoring the questions as they come in, and then I'll get to them at the end of our session here. So the last question here is, how, if at all, have cloud services changed how project management or service management functions? I know we talked a little bit about it, but if you guys have more on that thought, it'd be great to share.
Yeah, so this is Ed from Illinois State University. We've moved a lot of our critical services to the cloud here in the last 2 years. Our learning management system, our HR, payroll, our SIS, and email are all clouded in the last 2 years. We've learned quite a bit. We've had some growing pains, certainly, and it's been varying success. One of the things from service management perspective is, when you get into this, don't assume that what you have today, if you're hosting it on site, is what you'll get when you move to the cloud. There's different expectations, I think, of what we had on campus, and then when we moved to the cloud with different vendors. And each different vendors have different ways to support you as well. So one of the big things I would say is, when you're going down that path, to really focus on the initial contract negotiations, make sure that you have everything clearly spelled out. SLAs are going to be critical. Expectations for downtime, response time, and maybe those are relatively obvious to some, but you want to make sure that in some of those lengthy contracts that it's clear what you're signing up for. Also just clarifying what the process is for your different upgrades and the expectation of timing of that. And when you have trouble, what's the expectation of that cloud host versus what we do, and having that conversation early on so that you're on the same page can alleviate some problems. Outage communications is another thing. When you're maybe hosting your own data center, if you have a server go down or something like that, you may be monitoring it and have alerts that you can get to your people immediately. Make sure that you're establishing that when you move to the cloud. And then also access to your data in the servers. We've had different challenges that have come up with that, and so it's just been a big learning process there. And then the cost, and we talked a little bit about total cost of ownership before, and there are definitely benefits to moving to the cloud, and we certainly have seen some of those. Sometimes on the front end, it may look like it's a little cost savings. You get rid of your infrastructure, maybe you don't have as many staff and things, but there are also maybe some less tangible costs in terms of the control that you give up that you may want to consider when you do that. And then as far as project management, when we moved, our student information system is a rather large project, as you can imagine, and I'm sure some have been through that. Just the different project management methodologies and some of the expectations in terms of scheduling the resources and deliverables and working those challenges out. You may have a project manager on site and would have certain standards and processes, and the vendor that you're working with may have a different set of rules. So that can be a challenge to be aware of, and to really try to establish the relationship and the expectations up front, I would recommend. So those are the good things. I think there's a lot of benefits, and we've had our learning management system has been a win for us. I think we've had some stability issues initially, and moving into the cloud has helped. And then from a service management perspective, one challenge we've had with email is moving to Office 365 has been great, but when they add the new services, our customers can maybe a little confused with the new tiles, and we haven't really had an opportunity to kick around and understand and be able to support them.
Yes, I would agree wholeheartedly with Ed. The speed of change dramatically shifts when you move to the cloud, whether you move as a SaaS products or you move to the IIS environment. And the ability for your project team and the project manager to be able to adapt to the speed of change is crucial. The infrastructure, for us moving so many of our services to Amazon, before where you would have to spec out a server and wait for it and have it delivered and then install and hope that it works and it was big enough. Now it's just like, oh, let's try this instance size. That doesn't work. Let's just spin up another one. And so the ability to rapidly prototype and rapidly change how we're doing things and troubleshoot actually has really made an impact, not only in how we respond to things, but then also what we need to consider. Whereas before, you know, we had our engineers and they knew the iron that they were working with, and now it's a different model. And the same is true from a SaaS perspective. The life cycle, the upgrades, the updates is usually driven by what the vendor's going to do, and they could change their release model from quarterly to monthly to weekly. And we have to be able to adapt to that and have that relationship with the vendor, so that if things occur in a time fashion that's really going to be detrimental, what sort of pushback, what sort of avenue do we have to that? And that is, again, as Ed had stated, where the contract and the roles and the responsibilities come into play and are very important to articulate clearly.
Yeah, I would agree.
Oh, go ahead.
Absolutely, with both of you. You're expanding your value chain, right? So it's getting more complex, and you're still accountable for the whole service, but you're not responsible for bits and pieces. So you really do need to take extra caution in those relationships. And you know, Bev and I were talking about this before, and we were talking about the responsibilities and roles really need to be hashed out explicitly.
From a perspective of the service management office, we have numerous services that are run in the cloud that our expectation for their entry into the service catalog might require a copy of their contract or underpinning contract. We have our purchasing review them, and lawyers that work for purchasing go over it to make sure that it meets the needs. But then we have our requirements for, you know, third level support, response times, and all that must be in it. But this to say that we're mature in this effort is wrong. It's a evolving process, and just one we keep trying to make better and better.
Okay, we had a follow-up question come in. Robert C. is asking, so has the move to the cloud services helped you either improve or create more pressure on the speed of delivering your projects, you know, using maybe more agile methods or DevOps, those kinds of things?
Well, definitely for Notre Dame, it has increased the pressure and increased the expectations. We adopted agile practices where for projects that it's appropriate for several years ago, and that has enabled us to be able to respond to that pressure. And now adding in the cloud aspects of it and the ability to change rapidly is just increasing that pressure. And so reaching that critical pivot point is something that I can see fast approaching as to where, you know, what is the factor that says this is the capacity that we can handle, and we need to be able to throttle that, but throttle it in an appropriate way, because the demand will always be there. The expectations will just continue to grow the higher the bar that we set. And that's something from a management perspective that we have to be cognizant of and handle the expectations appropriately, because the speed of change is definitely growing, but yet we are still human beings, and we have to respect the burnout factor that exists.
Yeah, and I would add, I think when we first started to go to the cloud, I think it was sold as something that would improve the speed to complete projects, and so the expectation was set, but I don't know that it's ever really materialized. So there's still that expectation by some of our users and stakeholders out there, but I just don't know that we've really seen it. So there's that added pressure maybe without the value that we had hoped or that we sold.
Well, that particular value. Maybe there's more continuity.
I'm sorry?
I was just saying there might be other aspects of value that got better, even if that one did not.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's probably true.
I think it really pushes the point of managing the expectations of the end users, the customers, as to what they're going to get. And if I had one thing to learn from all of this process is that communications with the stakeholders is so essential to the success of it.
So this is Bev Guyry from, I think from my perspective, it really does make it more critical for us to partner with our clients, because with a lot of these services, especially on the application side, they can go in and configure it themselves, and we have to figure out how does that fit in with the overall service ownership, or they can, just clarity around who manages the vendor. They can develop direct relationships with the vendors, in some cases acquire the services directly. So it requires a different, I think, a higher level of partnering with our clients. And from a service management perspective, agreeing and aligning on how we maintain the service, who makes changes to the service, what's the communication, if the changes to the service are coming both from the clients as well as from IT.
That's an excellent point. What's the value proposition in buying from IT versus going out and obtaining it yourself? And I think it also changes a support model. I mean, how do you support cloud services when you didn't grow it, when you didn't, develop it? So these are all things I think are impacted by cloud services. Okay, another question's come in. So what processes are in place to show an institutional view of projects and services in central and decentralized units?
I can try to address from a central/decentralized process here, because again, the centralization are the units that are in, and the ones that we still have all our campuses, they run their own services, but they at least report it into the service management office. We purchased performance analytics and reporting with our tool, and we created dashboards around the 6 processes that we run, and those are available. But if one thing I want to set as a precursor, if I had this to start over again, I would really hammer the reporting and the performance analytics right up front. Yeah, I was told, hold off, you won't have the right data, but you want people to be managing towards that data, even if it's wrong initially, to get them working that way. And we're doing a catch up right now. And the other thing is designing the reports specifically around the service, maybe around the specific service offering or technical component, and around the roles, such as service owner, assignment group managers, and maybe around support desks, around that function, that they can see these reports and manage towards that data.
I can speak from a project perspective. We have a project portfolio management system that for all of the projects that Central IT is responsible for, we have a portfolio view and a sub-portfolio view of those things. We do not have a tie to our service management tool, and that is something that we are eagerly looking forward to doing in the future, so that we can associate projects to services and provide a more cohesive and collective view on that.
This is Hema here from Georgia Tech. As Michelle said, we also have a central portfolio management tool to manage all our central IT projects. And we meet once in 2 weeks to review the key critical projects. And some of our decentralized units also use either the same tool or similar tool, but it's not combined or rolled up to give a complete institutional view today. However, in our once in 2 weeks project review meetings, we have those stakeholders participate and share their key projects and key happenings and any issues, or if there are projects that collaborate or overlap with the central IT, we do talk about that. So that's where we are. And as I said, services, we are at a very early stage.
Here at BU, we have a service catalog that is public facing. So that is an institutional view of services. And within our tool, we have another instance of that same catalog, and we also have services that are decentralized in there. So decentralized units can use the tool for their services, but they might have their own public-facing catalog out on the web. And then from a service owner perspective, we've been creating service dashboards to represent activity in the tool across any given service. That's work in progress.
Okay, so we're about 5 minutes till the hour. I want to thank our panelists for giving us their time and their thoughts around these topics. I appreciate it. So I just want to say this concludes the panel discussion. I'd like to, again, thank you for your time. Thank the audience for attending. They have been kind enough to provide their contact information if you want to reach out. We're always looking for fresh ideas, so if you have an idea for a webinar or have a desire to present, please contact me using the email listed. I'll make sure you get a copy of that in the recording. Also, just to let you know that this presentation is being recorded and I will have it available on the ITSM Wiki site within 5 business days. It's also a good place to view upcoming events and past recordings. Again, thank you for your time and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks a lot.